This is the Fitzy and Whipper with Kate Ritchie podcast.
This is fascinating. Gary Jubelin is one of the country's most respected homicide detectives. Gary's worked across the armed, hold-up squad, organised crime squad, gang squad, unsolved homicide squad. He retired in 2019, but Gary's got some great podcasts out there, and he's got a new one called Breaking Badness. It's available now on the Daily Telegraph website or wherever you get your good podcasts from, and he joins us now. Thanks for coming in, Gary.
Hello, Gary.
Welcome.
Thanks
Gary,
very much. You know what's interesting? There's so many questions and topics we want to talk to you about. When you talk about breaking badness, the first question, because of the people you've dealt with and come across in your career, can you, and often you see these articles written, can you see a consistent personality trait in some of the bad people you've come across?
There are quite often, and like you have different degrees of badness. There's some people that there's no hope for. Born bad and will be bad for the rest of their life. But what I've found, and I've been able to, since I've left the police, be able to look at it from a different perspective. And what I've found is that the upbringing in the environment that people grew up, like a lot of people in prison, if you grew up in that environment, well, we'd probably all end up there. So I think that plays a part. But, you know, I worked very closely with a forensic psychologist, Dr. Sarah Yule, when I was in the police, and she was always at pains to point out to me, just because someone does a bad thing doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. Yeah. And if you adopt that sort of approach, I think you get a more realistic take on the type of people that we see in the headlines. They've done bad things, but what's the circumstances leading up to it?
Right.
Which chapter of their life are they in? What are the things that are affecting them at that moment?
Yeah, definitely.
I know this is going to sound like a very crazy question, but in relation to the work you do and the crime scenes you've been to and the cases you've been involved with, is there kind of one particular area or one particular genre of crime that you... I'm trying to find a better word than enjoy, but are there cases where you think, this is where I'm at my best, or this is, I enjoy this the most kind of thing? And
when you're talking about homicide, I take the word.
No, exactly, and that's why I'm struggling to ask the question.
No, this sounds a bit like I've become too numb to it, where you say there's some straightforward murders where it's like tracking an elephant through the snow. You go to the crime scene and you go, okay, well, we know what's happened here, stupid, and you go lock the person up. What I found is that the more, and I learnt every day that I came to work, the more experience I got, the challenge was the difficult ones. So that's what inspired me. The ones that had been written off, the ones that you weren't meant to solve, that the skills that not just yourself but the team, because it's always a team effort solving a murder, that you could bring those skills to the table and you actually make a difference. So they're the ones that inspired me. The gangland type killings, like I did a lot of the bikie type stuff, I still find motivation on those ones. But when there's someone that's not because of their lifestyle, nothing other than they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, are victims, you get, there's a lot to be inspired for and driven to make sure you solve those type of investigations.
One of your most high-profile cases is the William Tyrell case, and you worked on that for quite a while, Gary. I want to ask you, I know you can't talk about it too much, but with your position, there'd be a lot of gut feel that you get, Gary. You got to go with your gut, and you would have been so immune over the years and watching body language and watching things. I've always wanted to ask you this question. Deep down in your gut, do you know what happened to William Tyrell?
I led the investigation for 4 years, so I took it over after about 4 or 5 months after William's disappearance. So to say I've got no idea would be a bit concerning.
Yep.
I certainly... I put it this way. There's things when I'm looking at persons of interest, let's call them persons of interest, red flags that present themselves. Right. And the way you go through a homicide investigation is just prioritise and eliminate the suspects one at a time.
Yes. Yep.
I can't say definitively I know who's done it because it's a matter that hasn't been before the court. But I certainly had ideas on it when I was taken off, and we're beating around the bush. I was taken off the investigation in controversial and dramatic circumstances. It was overnight removed from the investigation. What concerned me is that I thought I had the investigation pointed in a healthy direction, that we might have been able to resolve it. I can't say definitively we would be able to resolve it. Where the Tyrrell investigation's gone since I've been taken off the investigation, I've spoken publicly about it. I don't want to be critical because I haven't been on the investigation since that time. I haven't had any involvement. But I've seen some things that have really concerned me, and the way it's been played out in public over the past 18 months, and one suspect has been nominated, and the media have been briefed on certain developments on it. That does not sit comfortable with me. I think we need to have this resolved. There's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of rumour that comes from information being released, and we need it resolved. The thing that gets lost in the controversy about the William Tyrrell matter, and I say that, and I'm involved in the controversy, so it's not me standing from the outside, is that what's forgotten is this young child has disappeared, and we still haven't got answers for it. And the New South Wales Police, should be judged by their actions, and if the way it's playing out, perhaps there needs to be an inquiry about what's happened with the investigation. But I'm still hopeful that answers will come out. It's been before the coroner for years and years. Hopefully the coroner comes back soon and gives it some direction. And this investigation, over every other investigation I've worked on, you sneeze, and if it's to do with William Tyrrell, it's on the front page of the paper and the lead story. Why? Yep. I think because people can relate to a 3-year-old child playing at his grandparents' place and just disappearing. That's a safe place. These type of things don't happen. So I think, and then that iconic picture of William in his Spider-Man suit, just shortly before he disappeared. So I think it resonates with all of us. So I understand the media's appetite to it.
The new podcast, Breaking Badness, you're talking about Breaking Badness and the prison system here in Australia. What is it working, Gary? Do these guys go in and come out more hardened criminals, or is it doing the right thing at the moment?
Well, if you look at the recidivism rate in this state...
Recidivism.
Like recidivism as in go in the jail, come out and end up back in jail.
Right.
But since I've left the police and doing the podcast and speaking to people from a different perspective, I've started to learn that, if you treat people a certain way in prison, the likelihood is when they come out, they're going to reoffend. And I spoke to some senior corrective services officers, and they pointed me to the direction of what they're doing at Macquarie Correctional Centre, which is a jail with a little bit more innovative. They give the prisoners freedoms that they don't get in the more traditional prisons, and they create a social environment where the prisoners have got to get on. They live in dorms. Now, this is a maximum security prison. When they first told me there's 25 prisoners, they're all living in a dorm. I thought the recipe for disaster, but it works. And instead of resolving things in the traditional prison way, which would end up in tears and someone severely injured, if not dead, they mediate, they resolve things, and they discuss.
Wow, it works.
And rewards?
It is bizarre.
You get rewards, Gary? Like they get rewards if they do certain things?
Yeah, they flipped it a little bit. They give them the rewards when they come into the prison, and then they take the rewards off if they misbehave. And there's a policy of no violence. So if you're involved in conflict, you're out. So you've got these hardened prisoners sitting down and debating. Like in the actual dorms, if they don't like someone, they have a meeting and they virtually get voted off. It's like being voted off Love Island.
It's exactly the same.
Wow. Look, I see
Prison Island.
I see the merit in what you're talking about, but because I agree when I'm sitting here speaking with you. But then, of course, there's a whole part of the population, sometimes people who have been affected by acts of crime, and they think, well, this person who did this to my family or my son or my daughter, they don't deserve these things. But I guess that's losing sight of what rehabilitation is meant to be about.
Well, Kate, your concern was my concern. When I was invited into the prison, I thought, okay, what's this? Is the wool being pulled over my eyes? Have I gone soft? What's happened? And I wanted to get perspective from a victim. So I spoke to Ken Marslew. Ken Marslew's son was killed in an armed robbery. He was shot by a shotgun working at Pizza Hut, 19 years old. Now, if anyone's got a right to be angry at people that commit crime, it's Ken. That was a long time ago, 20 years ago. Ken's changed his views, and we're quite close, Ken and I. And I got his opinion on that. Because you want to get, what would the public think? Why are we going soft on these? His point was, you're not going soft on crime, you're being smart on crime. And if you reduce recidivism, as in reduce people committing crime when they come out, that reduces victims. So that's a smart play. And that's what they're trying to do at Macquarie. And I've got to say, I think what they're doing in there makes a lot of sense. I'd prefer to be living next door to a prisoner that came out of Macquarie Correctional Centre than live in someone more traditional prison.
Gary, we could talk to you all day. It's fascinating, and if you want to go check out Gary's new podcast, Breaking Badness, it's available now on the Daily Telegraph website or wherever you get your good podcasts from, mate. We appreciate you being so open with us, Gary, and we'd love to get you back in again soon, buddy.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Gary.
it.
See ya.
Fits in Whipper with Kate Ritchie is a Nova podcast. For more great shows like this, download the Nova Player via the App Store or Google Play.
The Nova Player.